Okay, good morning. We are in our CS-Sensei Cybersecurity Mentorship webinar. The webinars are held Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern Time at freeconferencecall.com with the meeting ID of CS-Sensei. CS-Sensei. And this morning, I wanted to talk about, and I called it Acronym Soup. In other words, there are just so many acronyms out there, it's hard to keep them apart from each other. And these are very, very close to each other. But they mean different things. And that's why I wanted to bring this up and sort of share with you what occurred at my agency this week. I'm not going to name names or anything, but it brought and reminded me that this is still an extremely big deal. So let's start with I'll call it an icebreaker, and this is where everyone can participate. I want you to describe all the IoT devices under your control today. Anybody?
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, IoT is Internet of Things. So it can be any device. It can be the printer, TV.
Okay. So do you have a smart TV?
Yes.
Okay. And you have a cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's two.
Yeah.
What others?
Yeah, printers.
Yep. You have a Wi-Fi printer?
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
Printers, laptops, computers. It can be Alexa. An Alexa, that's also.
An Alexa device.
Yeah.
Anyone else? What are your IoT devices?
Vacuum cleaner.
Vacuum cleaner, absolutely. I have one right over there, and I've got an app, and I go, and my vacuum goes somewhere. So yes, you're right. Anyone else? Light bulbs. Light bulbs. Here's a device that I just pulled from my wall, and it plugs in, but it's wireless. Now, admittedly, this is from ADT, which is, Kate, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but ADT is one of America's largest home and small business security providers. ADT does not use, or at least in my home system, they don't use Wi-Fi. They use what's called Z-Wave. So if you notice there, it says Z-Wave Plus. But the cheaper devices use Wi-Fi. Okay, so a device like this that's plugged in, you have an app that controls it, and it does something like turns this socket on and off. Well, what could be plugged into this socket? It could be a lamp. It could be your heart monitor, if you think about it. So this is actually OT, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, go ahead. What other devices?
Ring camera.
Ring cameras, absolutely. And in fact, all security cameras have the capability to be wireless devices. If you have to, as you're setting it up, if you have to give it your Wi-Fi password, it's an IoT device. What else? Oops. Uh-oh. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, man, I just dropped momentarily there.
Can't see you, though.
Okay. Well, so what else? What other devices can you think of?
Medical devices.
Medical devices. Heart monitors, CPAPs. My CPAP that I used before I had my surgery and lost 100 pounds, my CPAP would report back to the company, and they'd send me something that says, hey, you're due for new filters. I'm like, how did you figure this out? Because my CPAP would report itself. And it could be something as simple. I'm going to give a real silly example. How about an automated pet feeder? Could very well say, hey, I'm low on kibble for Trixie. What else? You guys are doing well. What else?
Is any car related to
Cars, automobiles. How about these? Any of you have any of these? The wireless photo frames?
I got my parents for Christmas.
And you have to put it on your Wi-Fi. Otherwise, it won't get updates. It won't see your photos because your photos are out in the cloud. So you guys are doing great. You guys are doing great. Okay, let's kind of skip through this and take a look at some of the things that I've come up with. And Kate, you were right. Motor vehicles, absolutely. My Hyundai lets Hyundai know how it's doing. And when I bring up my phone, that, when I sit in my car and turn it on, my phone pairs with the car. But guess what? I'm sitting here in my living room and my phone is still paired with my car that's turned off in the carport. How is that? That is still an IoT device when it's turned off and sitting in your driveway. On the left-hand side, the second one up from the bottom, fish tank thermometer. Do you guys remember that story that Douglas brought to us about a casino that had someone come in and compromise their network by getting into an IoT fish tank thermometer and using it to get back into their network? A fish tank thermometer compromised a casino. Okay, smart TVs, like you said, Nerman, solar panels. Any of you have solar? Guess what? They aren't all wired communication. They could have wireless up there, or in the back of your house. My digital power meter for my solar system, it probably doesn't use Wi-Fi, but it is wireless, and it communicates back to my electrical provider. Major appliances. You've heard the fun and games about how your LG refrigerator can tell you you're low on milk and order more milk for you. They exist. They're out there. How about a baby monitor or a nanny cam? Same thing. It's just like the security cameras. And I have the vacuum up there. Thank you, Kate. Good call. I figured nobody was going to get that one, but you did. So just something to think about. And the reason why I'm bringing this up today is I want us all to be able to make a differentiation between IT and OT, and why IoT really makes things very complicated. Very complicated. Okay, so information technology, this is straight from the Government Accountability Office, GAO. Any equipment or interconnected system of equipment that can collect, store, process, maintain, share, transmit, or dispose of data. Okay, sounds pretty simple, sort of like anything that's connected. Well, operational technology, or OT, has been in the news a lot recently. I don't know if you guys have caught it, but it's been in the news a lot. It's programmable systems or devices that interact with the physical environment, or manage devices that interact with the physical environment. So because my whatever plugs into this and I can wirelessly make this turn on or off, this is called OT. Make sense? It interacts with the physical, but it could just as easily, I forgot about this one. My wireless thermostat. for my HVAC system. I didn't even think about it. I can be driving home and say, please turn the heat up. And by the time we get home, the house is all toasty. If there's an app that connects to it, it could very well be IoT. But anyway, operational technology would include, for example, anything that interacts with the physical. So my wireless thermostat, my wireless security system, which this is part of, all interact and cause things to happen in the physical. So something to think about. Now here's IoT. This is a weird description, and there are lots of different descriptions, but it says a network of devices that contain the hardware, software, firmware, and actuators which allow the devices to connect, interact, and freely exchange data and information. Okay, IoT could be IT, it could be OT. All right, and that's where we get really confused. I gave an example. If any of you had a chance to review the IoT deep dive that video that we did last year, sorry, that electronic photo frame keeps flashing pictures up, so put it face down. I gave an example with, let's say you have a telephone, a wireless phone like this, and you walk into your office, and your office has a Wi-Fi system that has guest Wi-Fi, but it's also certificate enabled, and this is a government issued phone that has been programmed with the right certificate. If you walk in with your personal phone, let's say it's a iPhone 15, you walk in with your personal phone, it will connect to the guest wireless. Why? Because it doesn't have a certificate. If you walk in with an identical iPhone 15 that has been configured with the proper certificates, it'll connect to your business or government or organizational network automatically because it has a certificate that aligns it with your network. So something to think about. IoT is not just internal, it's not just external, it's not just physical devices. IoT is a mixture of them all. And here's what happens. It says IoT devices are an outcome of combining the worlds of IT and OT. And here's a picture straight from the GAO. These are all the examples that I put out and wrote down. But this is how they all sort of mix together. And that's why you guys need to be prepared for this when you're getting your new job. Because, and I gave a weird example. Let's say you have a particular place where you say no wireless devices are allowed, period. Absolutely. You have to put all your wireless devices into a locker and go through a detector to make sure you don't have a wireless pen or I'm just using this, and you've got a flashlight or something that has wireless technology. It is not allowed in this room. Well, that sounds wonderful, but what about your CEO's pacemaker? I'm sorry, your pacemaker is not allowed in this room. Well, you may have to make some exceptions, So when we think about IT, OT, and IoT, it's a mixture of stuff. And we, IT folks in general, have spent a lot of focus on IT. Big focus on IT. Computers, laptops, printers, servers, network switches, network routers, firewalls, network attached storage, those sorts of things. We're working on that. We got it down, and we're doing a good job of maintaining the security and integrity of those systems. Okay, but what happens when something like this comes into your environment? you are now dealing with a mixture between, turning my, I don't know, let's call it a security camera for a prison system on or off. You're now involved with the security system for the prison. Holy smokes, that's not IT. Well, guess what? Because it interoperates, it's within your management, and you have to learn about it. And here's where the GAO got involved. There was a bill that was passed 3 years ago that was called the Internet of Things CyberSecurity Improvement Act. And it mandated that U.S. government agencies weren't allowed to procure or use an IoT device anywhere that didn't meet NIST compliance standards. Yikes. And that said as of December of last year. A year ago. Here was the final summary from the GAO. Cyber threats to critical infrastructure, IoT and OT, represent a significant national security challenge. So the reason I'm bringing this up, and I'm going to get us back to a page, we'll just leave it at that page so that you can sort of stare at that. The reason I'm bringing this up is I think you all have seen a lot of, I shared about how when Russia was attacking the Ukraine, they actually got a hold of the cameras in that area and were using the cameras to say, how badly did we damage this area that we just attempted to bomb? Okay? They were using the cameras, security cameras, like for somebody's parking lot. They were using security cameras, they had broken into them, and were using them for intelligence gathering. Okay? OT could include things like PLCs, programmable logic controllers. And the examples that we've seen in recent months include PLCs that are part of critical infrastructures. You guys need to learn about critical infrastructures because they're all around us, and without them, things don't work. What if you have your nice, wonderful, Alienware laptop, but you have lost your power? Your laptop's not going to last long. And oh, by the way, your Wi-Fi, your internet connectivity went down as well with the electricity. So your laptop's relatively worthless. Electricity and power is a critical infrastructure. Water and sewer is a critical infrastructure. And what we found, what was reported recently, is that certain groups were attacking programmable logic controllers that had been installed in certain water treatment facilities. These were specific to water treatment facilities that had left their default passwords in for admin control. And they were accessible from the internet. Mighty simple, but very poorly designed and implemented. So when you get to your new job, one of the first things you may want to ask is, how are we, what sort of OT do we have? And how well are we controlling it? Is there something I can do to help in that area, to help figure out which ones we have, figure out where they're a problem for us, and figure out if we can get them firmware upgraded or whatever, put them into a life cycle where they are periodically monitored and managed. That would be an actual home run in your interview if somebody were to say, do you have any questions for us? Yeah, I do. How are you guys doing with OT and IoT? The reason, okay, now, here's why I'm bringing this all up. Oh, Nerman, go ahead.
I just want to mention something, since you mentioned, you said there have to learn about critical infrastructure. So we also, I just want to mention about industrial Internet of Things like pumps, sensors. I mean, the kind of really important cybersecurity, and nowadays we have a lot of those cyber attacks, like on like water systems, and like water systems use a lot of those pumps, sensors, like switches, stuff like that.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
I just want to mention that. I mean, in my opinion, I think that's the one really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we talk about traditional technology.
Yep. And so IT is what we think about frequently while we're doing our studying and our resume preparation and those sorts of things. We're thinking about IT. But your employer could be involved with, think about it, if you have a fleet of trucks and they all have GPS on them that report back to the home office. What if the GPS tracking goes down? Ships out in the ocean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Maersk, M-A-E-R-S-K, Maersk. All of their ships are GPS tracked. They know where every ship is at any time 24/7 worldwide. And it's because that helps them be more efficient. Well, you may be hired into a job where you're actually helping with some of that operational technology. Not just IT, but you're an IT specialist doing OT management work. And then this new thing, I say new, they've been talking about it for more than 15 years. The Internet of Things is where IT and OT overlap, if you want to think about it. So you need to know all three of them and what makes them different. If somebody says IT systems, if somebody says IoT systems, those are referring to. And the big thing to remember with OT, my suggestion is that they interact with the physical. And this is a great OT example. It's plugged into the wall, but the wireless comes in and says, turn this on, turn this off, turn this on, turn this off. Okay? So important for you to know. The GAO contacted my organization this week and conducted a meeting online with a number of the high ups in our organization. And they said, how are you guys doing on implementing this act that was passed in 2020? And by the way, this GAO report was from 2022, more than a year ago. So they're like, how are you guys doing? Have you identified IoT systems? Have you identified how you are going to ensure? Because remember, it said in the act that you have to not purchase. So, okay, purchasing people, do you have guidance for people who want to go out and buy things for what they need to look for? Wow. Remember, earlier this last year, they came up with the CyberSecurity seal of approval. That could be a way to say, we're not going to buy anything unless it has a seal of approval. But the big question from the GAO to my organization was, have you done it? So that's number one, to acquire, and number two was to use IoT devices. They must comply with NIST standards. And some of the NIST standards include things like no default hard-coded passwords, no hard-coded backdoors, no admin passwords that come from the factory published to where people know what they are. Now you can scramble them and write it down on the owner's manual or something, but it can't be something that is published. And oh, by the way, if you go out on the internet, you can say, what are IoT default passwords? And there are thousands of them out there. And they say, if you have this router, this model, here's the default passwords to get into it. It's out there. So you got to be very, very careful with that. So acquire and use. One of the other requirements by NIST is that the firmware within a device can be updated. I don't know if any of you have ever played around with these Wise cameras. These are a real cheap way to get into security for your house or whatever. If you have a storage unit or a barn or whatever, these are really good, really inexpensive. And about every month or so, Wise, you connect into it and it says, hey, I need a firmware upgrade. Is it okay if I update myself now? Sure. And then it goes off and it gets its firmware update and reboots and says, okay, ready to go. So, in reference to firmware updates, this would meet the NIST requirements. This updates itself. Goes back to Wise and says, hey, am I okay at this level? And Wise says, sure, yes, you are. Or no, you're not. You need this firmware update. So, yeah, Nerman.
Oh, no, I think that was before, But anyway, I have a question. So, for example, for those government agencies, do they require network segmentation, especially when you have IoT devices?
Funny you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Right. I was speculating with my boss. I'm with IT Asset and Configuration Management for my organization. And I said, IoT devices are not necessarily IT. It could be government purchased, but it's not government owned. It could be something that, comes leased from the lab or something. So it may not be government owned. It may be government leased or government purchased. Do we want it on our IT networks? Probably not. Our networks have segmentation for such things as voice, for people that are using VoIP phones. Their data goes on different VLANs to everything else. Data, which is like from your laptop to the servers and out to the internet, your web browser and all that, that's a data network. But what about, and I said, there are security systems and there are security VLANs where if, I'm not saying that my government organization uses Wise cams because they don't, but security systems should be segmented off so they only see other security systems on the network. You're right, segmentation. And then last, I said, because of this GAO requirement, oh, I dropped again. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I lost my video again. So I'm turning my video off. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm just cycling it. Because of this new requirement, this may be justification for an added IoT VLAN. Might be justification for it. How do we keep IoT devices to where they can be monitored and managed? And also, if somehow they are compromised, they don't turn into problems for our other network VLANs. So yeah, network segmentation, you remember this from your Security Plus, I'm sure. Network segmentation is one of the mitigations that you can and probably should employ to make sure that your devices aren't corrupting each other. This guy should be on one VLAN, this guy should be on another, my voice should be on another, my laptop should be on another, servers could be on another. you know, those sorts of things. And that way, you're not going to have a laptop that is compromising a server. One of the big things they talk about with any of these devices is if somebody can get into it and take control of it, it becomes part of what they call a botnet. Have you guys studied about botnets? Learned about botnets? TCP/IP allows you to do a number of things, one of which could be to ping another device, ICMP ping. And imagine if I have a botnet of, oh, I don't know, 1 million Wisecams, and I say, hey, Wisecams, ping that device. So this device is now getting 1 million pings every second. You have then orchestrated and put into effect what's called a distributed denial of service attack, DDoS, with cameras. Okay, that's why the IoT concern is so big. They're saying that these things aren't, they're more vulnerable because you could have bought the chip from Taiwan or China or Singapore or, you know, who knows what else is on that chip. The people who bought it and put it into this device probably don't know all the things that it does either. But somebody does, you know, so that's why there is so much attention being paid. We've got computers. We're doing computers pretty well. We've got servers. We've got network infrastructure devices. We're doing security systems pretty well. Now it's time to do everything else. And that's what this IoT Act is all about. So I think that if you are researching, looking into for an interview, I'm going to stop sharing so you can see me on the screen. If you are looking into an interview for an organization that you believe has a significant OT reachback, for example, the GAO identified 3 main federal government agencies that had a lot of OT. One was the Department of Energy, because they interact with power production nationwide and, oh, by the way, nuclear production and those sorts of things. Significant OT. Another one was Health and Human Services for medical devices, monitoring devices, medical systems. You know, how can you be sitting at your home, and they have these, and you start to develop a myocardial infarction? Your little device on the desk calls the 911. Could save your life. That is considered OT. So Health and Human Services. And the third was Homeland Security. Because, well, planes, trains, and automobiles. If they interact wirelessly, you have made the connection between information technology and operational technology through the use of OT, IoT. Okay? So something to think about. When you're looking at a job for an organization, if you believe they have some significant OT reachback, they do things with things, you might bring it up in the interview and say, are we doing a good job of managing OT? Maybe I can help because I know about that. Something to think about, okay? Questions, comments? What do you guys think? Okay. All right, well, I'm going to turn the recording off.